I logged into the wrong meeting. And so the challenges of online communication in the time of COVID. But I hope everyone's okay. Welcome. The first item was visiting announcement. We had 22 applications for the position to replace Emily. I thought we would have the hiring process finished by now, or I'd hoped, and we haven't. And the candidate that I hope will take the job has not yet informed the candidate's employer. So I'm going to have to communicate this by email once. I hope this will be done by next week, but it isn't done. So I don't have any news. On that score, the next thing is just quickly on development. We have an alum who's really taken the bull by the horns, paid for some drawings to redo the Allen courtroom, the Cox Lounge part of the library. David Ensign is in the library part. I'm going to wait until August since people don't like to be bothered in July, but want to get input soon on these proposals, have people look at them, comment. It's only to get donors interested. He's very confident that people are going to step up. So we've developed a plan. So, it isn't the hottest market for development right now, but that's where we are. And I just wanted to let you know that's coming. Next thing, Lars, do you want to go to the student handbook? And then mostly we'll talk about fall. Before we proceed, however, Laura, you have your hand up. Do you have a question on anything I've said?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, Lars, go ahead just with the student handbook, and then I'll turn it over to you and Jim about fall.
So you were sent out a document that has the changes to the student handbook. They're mostly administrative, so there's no policy changes really as a general matter. We redlined it so you could see where the changes were made. We determined that we didn't need a faculty vote for those changes since they are just a recognition of administrative changes that have been made. But it was important, we thought, that the document accurately reflect the process by which matters will be handled internally, how Betty Eunice now reports directly to Renee, and Renee as Director of Enrollment Management would be responsible for things that had sort of been between Jennifer and Barbara Thompson. So we just wanted to make sure the faculty had an update on that. This was a change that was made a while ago, approved by the dean, and again, normally I would say we would propose things to the faculty for a vote for changes to the student handbook because many of those are policy based and thus require faculty approval. But because these were just mainly changes related to identifying the correct person who's responsible for the duties, we wanted to make sure that was in there. The change to the writing requirement, that was something that the faculty had voted on before, and that is a policy change. We had approved it, and we've now, and I should say Renee did, she incorporated it into the document so it reflects the current state of the upper division writing requirement. If there are questions, I see John and then Grace.
Yeah, just on the upper division writing requirement, we may have approved it this way, but there are a couple of typos in that, and I can send those to you offline. But if we can just fix those typos. Yeah,
fine. That would be great. I think what happened is, just so you know where it came from, it was Tony was working with Renee on this, and this is, I think, what we had in the minutes of the faculty meeting. So we can certainly make those adjustments to make sure the typos are helped.
Thank you so much.
Grace.
Yeah, I remember seeing the writing requirement materials, but I don't recall seeing any of the other student handbook changes. I know on the agenda for today it says that they're attached, but they're not attached to my document.
Janet sent it out, I believe, and I'm sorry I didn't follow up on that. I sent it to her, but I think she included them as an attachment to the notice.
Yes, that's an attachment to the faculty meeting invite.
I've got, my attachment is just the agenda. I don't have, okay.
Grace, this is Grace. This is Colin. If people would prefer, we can wait and do this in August as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm cool with it. I just wanted to see what they were. I mean, no problem.
Sure. We'll make sure you get a copy, Grace, and if there's anybody else, just send an email to me and I'll make sure you get a copy of this. The changes have been input, and what I'll send you is the red line version so that you can see what changes were made. And there's only really 2 levels of changes this time around. They were acknowledging changes in administrative structure and change to the previously approved changes to the upper division writing requirement. And John will send me his changes for typos, and I'll make sure that those get put in. But we can revisit this again at the faculty meeting in August if you have questions. Any other questions about the changes? I did have an offline comment about the administrative structure. It was proposed by Jennifer and approved by the dean last summer. So these changes have been in place for a year. It's just that we hadn't updated the handbook to reflect them. The job duties that Jennifer had and that Barbara Thompson had were divided up differently among different staff. And so that's the essence of where these changes come from. I think it's correct to say that we want to make sure that no one is overburdened by any changes that are made, but to date, I don't believe any of the staff have approached us to make sure, to comment that the changes are more overwhelming than they originally anticipated. I will say, what is overwhelming is, of course, dealing with COVID stuff. So I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people say they feel overwhelmed, but I don't think the structural changes are among those. I'm sorry, Enid, you sent you asked a question, Enid. I just want to make sure I got what you said. An organizational chart. I don't have that. I would imagine.
I have it. I can send it out. So yeah. We'll send that out.
Yeah. Betty reports to Renee, and that's probably the biggest change.
I'll send it out after today's meeting, Enid and everyone.
Yeah. All right.
So, Laura, I think we're next to go to what the university is calling the pivot to fall. Yeah.
Yes. So now, with respect to the pivot to fall, the university has posted a document. It's been out there now for a couple of weeks. I hope everyone at the university everyone at the law school has had a chance to read that document, because obviously we're going to follow along. We're mandated to follow the changes that the university has made so that we can go live in the fall. Many of the decisions about how things will be structured were determined by the central administration and then rolled out to the units. Obviously, we have things internally to the building that we have to do a little bit uniquely. I think the biggest changes are about how we're offering classes, and then about the issues related to operating in the building, including cleaning and distancing and the like. So Jim and I are both going to talk about these things. I thought I would start, Dean, if this sounds all right with you, to talk about the modes of instruction changes, and just to see where we are with the changes and what the university has mandated. Is that okay with everybody? All right, not hearing any complaints, let me go ahead. So by now, you know that we've had to adapt the way we're going to teach the classes in the fall at the instruction of the university. Tony spent a lot of time working with the faculty on making sure their classes fit into the modes of instruction that the university had mandated. We came up with a schedule of classes that fit that, and we are rolling that out. I believe Tony had sent that out to all of us. At this point, it's probably 3 weeks ago. So thank you. First of all, Tony did the heavy lifting on this, and we should absolutely thank Tony for all of his incredible work to make this happen. So we're at a point now where we have internally made decisions about the modes of instruction that each individual faculty will be doing. I'm sorry, somebody's got their microphone on, and I don't want to talk over that. I'm sorry, somebody's phone is ringing, and if they could maybe mute, that would be great. Thanks. So the modes of instruction are essentially two major modes of instruction and then what I would say two secondary ones. And let me just take a second to talk about that. So the university very much wanted to have live instruction in the fall, but they realized that we couldn't do it in the traditional way. So they created a category of a class called hybrid. So if you are teaching a face-to-face class in the fall, or would have been teaching a face-to-face class in the fall, and you wanted to stay in the classroom, your course was converted to hybrid. And hybrid means that each student in your class must be able to take up at least 25% of the material that you are delivering over the course of the semester remotely. So, for example, let's say we'll take a look at torts in the fall. So torts is a 3-credit class. It meets twice a week. The torts professor would have to make sure that each student has the ability to be out of the classroom remotely listening or reviewing the materials at least 1/4 of the time of the class, up to 3/4. So a hybrid class requires remote instruction from at least 1/4 of the time to 3/4 of the time. And that calculation is student facing, it's not faculty facing. And so what that means is that in your classes, each one of your students must be able or must be taking 25% of your class remotely. So torts is a large class. It has 50, 55 students in it. And we don't have any classrooms on campus that we can use that accommodate 55 students. So Tony decided to divide the torts class in all of the first year sections into 2 groups. And so there will be a torts section 1 will have group 1 and group 2, group A and group B, whatever we want to call it. One group, in order to accommodate this, the easy solution to the 25 to 75% rule is that the students attend class 1 day a week live and they attend remotely for the other day. So that's then the 2 days a week that the students would be in class. The document that Tony sent out to us would have said half and half. And what that half and half means is half the class live at any given point. That's 50%. It's within the university's guidelines. We're all set. Now, for ABA purposes, that makes the class distance ed. Fortunately, the ABA is accommodating everybody on this and saying you just have to tell them what you're doing and that you are instituting systems that make sure that we're doing what is expected of us under the standards. They're not waiving any of the standards, but except for the distance ed rules. And I believe the dean has already submitted that, and we've said yes to have this, and we have procedures in place to make sure that we're following the ABA guidelines.
Lars, can I clarify something? So yeah, the ABA got that yesterday, but they are waiving the rules only for classes that were not scheduled to be taught in an online or hybrid fashion previously. So classes that already were listed to be taught as online or hybrid will still count towards the 1/3 that can be taken online for the degree. Anything in response to the pandemic will not be counted.
Tim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Lars. I have been approached by a student concerned for her own and her family's, safety. My insurance class is scheduled to be taught as one of these half on and half off classes, which is I'm okay with that. But this student says, I'm really concerned about coming. My question is, do we have any sort of process, or is there any way to accommodate individual students who may have higher risk factors?
So the university, even within the hybrid classification or mode of instruction, absolutely accepts that individual students may have needs that vary from what we're doing. And so they want us to be as understanding as we possibly can be with every student who finds themselves in that situation. You would work with that student and with us, the administration, to make sure that the student is getting all the instruction that they need in a way that is consistent with the values of law instruction and meets their needs as with respect to their health and safety. That would require, I think, Tim, in your case, that you record every class and that you track that the student listened to every class. However, we're not going to make that, we're not converting your class to a remote class for that purpose. It's just for that one student. And we can talk offline about how we work with individual students. Now, the university has, for the undergraduate program, what they've tried to do is help the students figure out a way to do things through online education, but we don't have an online education system, so it's not like you can plug a student into our online education. We don't have that. We have some courses that are online, but not as a general matter all courses. So I think what we're going to have to do is to be as accommodating as we can, with the understanding that a faculty member will have to, you're going to have to pay attention and make sure that that student doesn't fall through the cracks. It's not ideal. It's not the best way to do it because you're not teaching that class as a distance ed class. But I think we have to be realistic that we're going to have students that are at risk and need assistance from us.
Oh, I hate having to pay attention to students.
Right.
Who would be the primary administrative contact for that, for working out the details?
I think that it'll be me and Crystal and probably Renee will be the three of us who will work together with you to make sure that all parts of the instruction get done correctly. So I'll work with you and Crystal will work with the student, and Renee and Crystal and I will work and make sure that they're getting the materials that they need and that they're sufficiently supported in the way they need to be. Does that make sense?
Lawrence, just so we're clear.
So that's fine.
Just so we're clear, faculty should come to you in the first instance.
That's
and
fine.
Then you will, right. Just so that we don't get them going to three people. So if you have a concern, first to go to Loris.
I think that this is a faculty issue to start with because you have a student that is in your class and it's a teaching issue. So that would be me. And then we'll bring in the support staff, Angela and everybody else necessary to make sure that that works. Laura, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure when or how to ask this question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. But it relates to students with visual impairments or hearing impairments. If whoever is doing those accommodations knows of them, and we may not have anybody who needs closed captioning or any of that sort of thing, will we be given notice of that fairly soon because it affects how you prepare PowerPoints and other materials?
Renee has her hand up. I think she wants to answer this question because she deals with the Disability Resource Center.
Yeah, Laura, as of right now, we don't have notice of anyone who has those kind of disabilities. We haven't in the past couple of years, so I don't anticipate we're going to have any. But really, that's on our students. We let them know in order to get accommodations, you need to apply as soon as possible. And as soon as we get those from the Disability Resource Center, we'll let faculty know what needs to be done. But it could be that a student doesn't pay attention to all of our warnings and comes to the first day of class and then suddenly realizes, oh, hey, I need this, and we'll have to scramble. But as soon as we get the notice, we will let faculty know.
And I will say that Renee has been great about working with students to make sure that they know what they need to do and coordinating with them about things like in the classroom what they need and for exams and the like. We've had students that have gotten just accommodations like every class should be recorded, for example. So we do what the Disability Resource Center asks us, and I'll coordinate and Renee and I will coordinate with you to make sure if you have a student in your class that needs to be accommodated that we work out the details on that. Yes, Laura.
Is it correct that every class will be recorded, or how do we?
Okay, so here's what the university has said. They have not mandated that every course be recorded, and partly that's because not every course is going to have synchronous instruction. There are a lot of asynchronous courses, distance ed courses. What they want us to do in our hybrid classes is to record our class sessions so that the students that are not in the class will be able to participate. They have not set out a hard and fast rule. They're leery about dictating all aspects of how a class will be administered. I think it would be unimaginable that there's any way you could accommodate the hybrid rules and not record. Now, you could use Collaborate Ultra or Panopto and stream live and tell the students, I expect you to attend live, but that would violate what the university feels is the core mission here about this Pivot to Fall, which is to provide the students with as much support and help in dealing with the crisis. So the reason for the hybrid rule is to get the students out of the class as much as possible while still providing a live classroom experience. So in your hybrid class, I think a perfectly acceptable way to do this is for you to, let's say you're teaching property, right? So you teach each day, and for the students who are not in your class, the half that are out that day, you say to them, I'm recording it, and you will listen to the recording of the class on the day that you're not present. Now I will work with you, and the Delphi Center can work with you to make sure you understand how to stream the class live so they could attend at the time of the class, but because you're going to record it, they can also listen later. Does that make sense?
No.
You don't have to keep raising your hand, Laura. We're
okay. Actually, it doesn't make sense to me because maybe, I'm the dinosaur here. So I guess I assumed that when I had the group in the room for property, that the other group would actually be watching live, and then it would also be recorded, and that was automatically the way it was going to be done. And now I'm thinking that's not automatically.
That is a perfectly acceptable way to do it, Laura.
Okay,
Here's the thing. The university does not want us to have attendance policies that apply to these students who are not in the class. So if they don't attend, your recording is how they will engage with the material.
Okay, but my question is, will Jim be working with us so we know how to do that when we walk into the class?
You will talk to the Delphi Center to get instruction on how to do this. However, Jim will help you set up the microphone in the classroom, but you have to learn from the Delphi Center how to do your class. That's not Jim.
Well, that also
Jim does not do instructional technology. The Delphi.
Okay. Will that also include how to do PowerPoints while you're teaching a class?
Yes, and you should have received emails from the university where they're encouraging everybody to engage with the Delphi Center to learn about how to use instructional technology. They're running Delphi U all summer, and I can put you in contact with Amy Green, who is terrific, and we'll gladly work with you to set this up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
it. Laura, I sent an email.
I think he has.
Laura. This is the other Laura. I sent an email out to the faculty with the.
And I'm sorry. I should say Laura McNeil also is our contact person as a go-between. So sorry, Laura.
No worries. But I sent an email out, Laura, to the faculty that has links to sign up for that training. You can do one-on-one, or they have group trainings. It's really, really easy, and you can do them from Zoom like we're doing now, or in person. But I'll resend that to you now.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Laura McNeil she has taken on the responsibility of being our contact person with the Delphi Center. She's terrific on that. She knows this stuff really well and is happy to be a guide and an assistant, getting you the resources you need so that you can do the class. Jim, you had your hand up. Maybe you want to talk to Laura.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, if you know exactly what you want to do, and if that is something like, walk into class and teach to half the class live while the other half participates just like we are now using Blackboard Collaborate. And you want to record the Collaborate session for any student who may not be able to attend at that time. Linda Leake in the Delphi Center, Leake, would be the person to talk to. Amy Green is a higher level instructional designer. But as far as using specific technologies, I would contact Linda. That's what I want to add.
Yeah. And we'll make sure, Laura, and anybody on the faculty, please do not be shy about contacting me or Laura McNeil or Jim Becker about how you get in contact with the people that can help you, because I would hate for you to go be at the beginning of August and go, I don't know what I'm doing. That would be a terrible situation. We are ready, willing, and able to help you get ready for class. Let's.
Yeah, I went to I attended the first of the Delphi Center's classes yesterday, and there were 64 people in the class. I would say for any of us, which means all of us, who taught online the last 5 weeks of the spring semester, the value of the Delphi courses is marginal in the sense that there were people, there were people asking questions I knew the answers to, which is, a very alarming prospect. But and so my only point in saying this is that seeking individual help from Amy Green, for example, or from Laura McNeil, or anyone else who's experienced in doing online may turn out to be the better option.
I agree with that. If you already are familiar with the technology at some level, and they are absolutely willing to work with you one-on-one where necessary. I would say if you feel if you feel like you don't have any really grounding in how to do this, the basic Delphi U class is actually very useful. But if you are skilled at it, and Les has now did it over the summer as well, so he has a good understanding of how to do it well.
I know where the light switch is.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm happy to answer other questions about hybrid classes. The key to a hybrid, and just before I transition to the distance ed classes, the hybrid classes are the live classes, right? So small exception. So the hybrid classes are the live in-person classes. You're going to meet with your students at least 25% of the time live. That's every student, up to 75% of the time live. And for most of our big section classes, the easy way to do that is just to divide the class in half. You teach every day in the classroom, but only half the students are there at any given time. And that meets our requirements, and the university's requirements. But you can mix and match, and that would be something that we would do. We would talk to the Delphi Center on how to adjust. The other major kind of class that we have is the distance ed class. And the distance ed class is a class that is totally asynchronous. So there's no live classes scheduled for the students at all. All of the content is being delivered in a fashion that is either pre-recorded or involves online exercises. And there's no live interaction with the faculty member for the class session. So the content is being delivered via asynchronous instruction. That doesn't mean you can't have class meetings. Of course you can. You can have office hours. You can have voluntary meetups with groups of students. You can have discussion sections. The only thing, or the part of it that is different, is you will not be having a scheduled class meeting, and you can't require attendance at these voluntary one-on-one sessions that you do like this. But I know that Tony Arnold is going to be teaching his property class that way, and he will deliver all of his content asynchronously and then supplement that with meeting with the students individually or in groups. And so that way you do get to build the relationship with the students and have one-on-one or group contact with them, but they know that they can take all of the class online without having to attend a pre-scheduled session online, okay? That is very different from what we did in the spring, where it was all remote instruction at assigned times. The university believes that that kind of instruction, distance ed, is the best kind of online instruction, and that synchronous online instruction is challenging for students. Not that it's impossible, and not that it can't be done well, but on average, asynchronous is better than synchronous. So the professors that are teaching they've already agreed to that. They're talking. I hope at this point they've already been working with the Delphi Center on how to do that. Now we have two professors that have that we worked with, and we decided that in fact they probably would be better as doing remote instruction. So that is not in the building, but with pre-scheduled class meetings, and that is a remote class. The university almost didn't even allow that. But based on conversations between myself and the provost and many other faculty on campus, they did create a category for remote instruction. So that is a class that is online at a scheduled meeting time for the students. The content is delivered at that meeting time through a program like this. The reason they don't think that that is ideal is that the students didn't like it. The students, I think I can say with a high degree of certainty, that they communicated they were grateful that we did our best in the spring, and they hated remote instruction. So the university has then, as a result, tried to push us away from that. But they understand that not every professor and not all the material fits into their mold. And so they are allowing a couple of classes to be remote. So we have two professors who are teaching remotely, but that is an exception. The two major categories are hybrid and distance ed. And this is not to say that the professors who are teaching remotely won't do a good job. I am sure they're doing a good job. They're working with the Delphi Center to make their classes as good as possible. They just didn't feel comfortable being in the classroom, but still wanted to have live interaction with the students. Fourth category of class is called face-to-face. And Ariana, I see you have a question. Let me just come back to you, Ariana, and let me just finish what I'm talking about. In the catalog, we have a category called face-to-face. The university specifically limits this to practicums, clinics, and externships. So it's a face-to-face class is not a doctrinal class. It is a skills class, such as at the nursing school where they're working with patients in the hospital, same with medical school, or the dental school, they're working on patients in the dental chair. And for us, it's the clinics and it's the externships. So there are no face-to-face doctrinal classes, no face-to-face seminars, no face-to-face whatever, except for the clinics and the externships. So that's the last category. So if you say to me, I want to convert my class to face-to-face, the answer is, I know all the classes that are face-to-face, and no is the answer to that question. The university will not allow it. So Ariana has been waiting patiently. Then I see that Joanne has her hand up. So, and then I'll take other questions. So Ariana, go ahead, you with your question.
Okay, I had a few questions, so sorry
Sure,
if I missed anything. So first, did we ever get our unit level data where the law students last semester said how they experienced our synchronous courses?
I'm not aware of them having sent anything out, but there's been so much going on and the transition from Tony to me that I may have missed it. Maybe the dean got something on that.
The question, to make sure I understand the question, Ariana, you're saying, did we get comments from students about law classes? Yes?
Our unit level data. So you'll recall that on the teaching evaluations last semester, there were some additional questions to which the faculty were not privy to what the students had said. Of course, in our evaluations, some of them may have mentioned it, but those specific questions weren't given to us because they didn't want it to negatively affect us. So someone had asked them, either you or Lars, if we could then get the unit level data so the specific people would not know, but we could know from the law students as opposed to all these undergraduate students what their experience was like.
So we did get the unit level data. They said they had redacted names and many of or any identifying information. As I pointed out to Bob Goldstein, whose office produces that, in fact, the redaction was not thorough, and you could often tell who the class was because of some other references, so we got it. But I think it's fair to say that what Lars reported on the undergraduate experiences was reflected there. The general sense is they appreciated it, and sometimes they expressed surprise. That is, the people they thought would be the least technologically adept turned out to deliver classes that they were satisfied with, but the level of frustration was very high. So yes, we did get it. But I think what Lars said about the undergraduate courses is pretty true for us as well.
And if I could add a comment, Ariana, I think in a conversation that I was in with Bob Goldstein at one of the committee meetings I went to, he noted that I think law students probably had the least level of dissatisfaction with the synchronous classes compared to all other students on campus. And that may be because we were good at engaging in the Socratic method online as we had done in the classroom, but it was not like they thought the classes were great, that they were less dissatisfied than other students. So he said that we did the best job based on those ratings, is what I recall him saying. But, in my conversations with the provost, she didn't care. We're doing it this way, and that's, the university can't have 15 different versions of how the classes are going to be taught. So even if we could make a cogent argument that online synchronous education works for law school, which I think we could make a reasonably good argument, they were not interested in entertaining that argument.
So great. So then that's good to know that we did get that data and what it showed, since they took the time to gather it. I'm assuming we assume we're completely asynchronous. I'm not quite sure how we know that, but from what you're saying, it seems that's what we are. Can we still use our time slot for voluntary meetings? So if I'm scheduled from 10:30 to 12:05 and I want to have 5 voluntary meetings, can I use that time slot for those meetings?
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think one of the things that you'll have to take into account is that students might have made adjustments in the meantime, knowing that your class is distance ed. So your class would, I believe, like, for example, evidence, I believe, is a distance ed course. Is that right, Ariana?
I have no idea. I didn't know. I thought I was going to be able to use my time slot for certain meetings.
Yeah, I thought you and Tony had a conversation. So we said.
Yeah, he had told me I could use my time slot.
Yeah, surely. I mean, surely she can use her time slot to offer that almost as if it was office hours, or to clarify student questions.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's.
You just can't require students to attend.
But she said voluntary, right?
Yeah, I agree. But that's what I said to start with. I think that's fine. I just don't know if students will have made plans that change that. Have switched things around so that they're not available at that time. But if you make it voluntary, that's fine. So Joanne had her hand up. Oh, Ariana, do you have other questions before I go on? I want to make sure I've answered everything for you.
No, that's just different than what Tony had told me. But now that I understand that's how it is, I'll make clear that they're voluntary. Thanks.
Yeah, the key is with a distance ed course, the university doesn't want us to have required meeting times for any purposes, but that doesn't mean you can't meet, so long as the meeting times are voluntary and the students have some other way to engage with you.
And Ariana, I think as an addendum here, it's important to clarify, Tony may have said that, but really, and I think Lars feels the same way here, really it's that the landscape seems to change dramatically every day. I mean, or every week at least, it feels like we're doing 180-degree turns, every 3 or 4 days. And so a lot of this has been a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joanne, your hand up.
Whether I teach it from this chair.
Could you turn your microphone off? Thank you.
I'm just clarifying that lawyering skills is face-to-face?
No, it is hybrid.
Okay, that's news to me. Thank you.
No, it's not. The university, they have not changed this. They added face-to-face to deal with clinics and externships because there's a chance that the students have to deal with patients or clients or what have you. They've never had that category completely. A class that meets live is always hybrid, with the exception of the externships and the clinics. So when you say face-to-face, that category is as a mode of instruction is limited to externships and clinics. What your class is hybrid. So you are going to meet with your students live part of the time, and you will also make sure that the students are able to be remote 25% of the time. And that's what they mean by hybrid.
No, I hear what you're saying. I have to figure out what that means. for just it doesn't fit with what can we talk about this, just working out the logistics of you and me? Is that who I should be talking to? Because originally I talked to Tony, but I think it's you now.
And I'm sorry if this is being communicated for the first time to you. I thought we had been sending this out, and I know for certain the university has communicated this to the community since a month ago, that the only form of instruction that would be live is hybrid. They added face-to-face later, but it was always hybrid, and that they were always going to require that you allow your students, that you must give your students the ability to be out of the classroom at least 25% of the time.
I think that was the part I didn't understand, is that that there's a minimum of online, but I need to talk to the rest of the lawyering skills people, and we need to hash it out, what we think it could look like, and then I'll just talk to you after. Let's just set up a meeting and we can work out what we think it should look like.
Absolutely, and the material that Tony sent out, I think with your class should have designated half and half, meaning he assumed what you were going to do is be live with half the class at on one day and live with the other half the other day. And and in fact, what we're going to try and do with the 1Ls is to have the same group of people in the building for one day of the week. So they're all in there, or 2 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, group 1 will be in the building, and Wednesday, Thursday, group 2 will be in the building from each section. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
That's how
this is fine. This is just logistics now. We can talk about it later. Thank you.
And I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I'm coming into this as a transition. I didn't do the schedule. I'm implementing what Tony did, but he did send out a document that I think explained his thinking on how we were going to do this. The major.
I don't read emails, Lars.
Or neither do I. I think the major changes in terms of times are the 1L section, right? We completely revamped the 1L section. Every other class, if it's a hybrid class, it's in the schedule at the times that you were told back when registration occurred in March and April. John, you have a question.
Yeah, Joanne, I was plaguing Lars about this yesterday, and he's exactly right. If you look at the university document they sent out about 3 weeks ago, it's actually way, way more flexible than I think we're thinking right now. So you have a lot of different ways to allow 25% of the students not to be there. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lars, but I think all the legal or the writing skills courses are 100%. I mean, they're not half and half. And there are several other courses in the curriculum that way. We still have to allow 25% to be not there, but there's other ways to do that rather than do a half-to-half option.
Right. The default that Tony did with the schedule was assuming that for the 1Ls, for example, even if we have a classroom space where all of the students can be present in the classroom at the same time, that you have to come up with a way to have 25% be remote. The easy way is just to say, well, group 1 comes in on Tuesday and group 2 comes in on Thursday. But I agree with you 100%, John. That's not mandated by the university. So if you have a different way to revamp your class so that 25% is online, right? So the students are remote for 25% of the classes, we're totally fine with that. So exactly. To use your example, if a class has a space that can accommodate every student and the faculty member says, you know what, we're going to meet 3/4 of the time all together live, safely with masks and physical distancing, but I'm going to deliver 25% asynchronously, that works.
Yeah, I think that's where my confusion was, because just talking to Tony, and Tony didn't say any or do anything wrong. I got confused because the emphasis was on that everyone could be in there. So anyway, that's fine. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, and I want to distinguish. That's a very good point, and I'm sorry if this did not come through in what I was saying. Our big challenge for every class is finding a classroom that could accommodate the students. There are some classes where we have classroom space where you can be 100% of the students in the classroom at the same time. That does not change the requirement of the university that you have at least 25% be remote up to 75%. But if you choose to, you could say, hey, we're meeting together, all of us at the same time, and I'm going to deliver 25% remotely asynchronously. Perfect. That works. That meets the university's requirement. It meets our requirement. I'm totally happy with that. And in fact, I think even the 1L professors, if they can come up with a way to do it and deliver the material in a way that's effective, that's fine. What Tony wanted to do was create a default so that any professor could say, I'm going to be live and I'm just going to have the students listen off site for half the time. That also works. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And John, that's your understanding too, right?
Sorry, had to find the mic button. Yes, that's my understanding too. It's actually been quite flexible with it.
Absolutely right. The hybrid classes are not locked into a particular mode of instruction, with the only requirement being that every student be entitled to be out of the class 25% of the time. And that is student facing, and it's based on hours, meeting hours. So that's all the requirement is, at least 25%, but no more than 75%. Okay, so let me just take a second to talk about the classroom space. And Jim and I will follow up with other details about operations in the building, but with respect to classrooms. So as you can imagine, with our big section classes, it is a huge challenge to find rooms so that all the students can take these classes. So Tony and I talked about this. We worked on the committee with this, and we came to the conclusion that with the courses that are going to be hybrid and our large section, we're going to put them in a classroom that can accommodate up to 34. That's 275. But there's no way you can meet with all your students. So that class has to be divided up in a way where it's half and half. That really, I mean, if you can figure out another way to do it, that's cool. But you're going to at least have to split the class in half. And that's just because of the space restrictions we have in the building. We also have other classes that are smaller, and we can accommodate them in a classroom. Because some of the classes have gone to be distance ed and they're not taking the classroom space anymore, this has given us more flexibility to put classes like lawyering skills in non-traditional lawyering skills type classrooms like 075 or 175. So Tony did a nice job of figuring out how to accommodate those classes so that they could be 100% in the classroom with their students for their classes. We looked outside of our building. At one point I was talking to Ekstrom to see if we could use the Chow Auditorium. The problem is when the university came through and measured the spaces for the physical distancing of 6 feet, the fixed seated classrooms don't allow for a lot of space. So in Chow, even though it's 140 seats, they could only accommodate 38 people with physical distancing. So there was no point in us looking outside of our building. There just weren't going to be a lot of places for us to put classes that would allow 60 people to be together and compete with chemistry and physics and English. And so we just decided we'll keep everything in our building and just ask people to split their classes if they're teaching a hybrid class. With respect to marking, so when you walk into the classroom, the university is not moving furniture and they are not marking anything. They are providing signage and room diagrams. Jim Becker and I decided that was probably not adequate for our building, and what we needed to do was create a space where a student could walk in and immediately identify an open seat. So we are in the process of acquiring Jim's back, his connection dropped, he said. We're acquiring green painter's tape because it does not leave glue on surfaces. And we're going to mark off the seats that are available for students to sit in the fixed, in the 075, 175, and 275 classrooms, and maybe a couple of others, so that a student can walk in, we'll have it marked in green, and they sit down, they're done. And you as a professor can look out into the room and you can see who's sitting in what seats, and you'll know what's available. In the classrooms that have movable tables, we're going to mark on the floor where the table should go. And then we're going to take the extra furniture out of the room. So in 275, for example, there's a lot of a lot of chairs. We're going to take all the extra chairs and we're going to put them in 060, which is a classroom that no one likes anyway. So we're going to put them in there, and that way when the students walk in, there will be a chair for their seat, and that'll be it. Now, the challenge here is that physical plant is not going to help us with this. So if you walk into the classroom and there's a problem with it, we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to make sure that the tables get moved back to the spots that they needed to be in. And we're going to have to tell the students if we're short on chairs because a student organization took them away, that we're going to have to go to where they're stored and get them. It's not ideal. We're in the process of working with Kia about the building and with the custodians about how some of this is going to work, but the university is not providing staffing to move furniture. That's just not going to happen. So we have to figure out internally how to do that. So Laura had her hand up. Laura McNeil?
I did not. It was an accident. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. That's not acceptable. You now have to make a comment.
Nice shirt, Lars. How's that?
So Jim and I and Tracy have been working on this. We think we have a solution to the problem of where students should sit and where tables should go. So, for example, in the Cox Lounge, we're going to tape off where the tables are going to go, and we're going to use the Cox Lounge for a lot of seminar classes because it can accommodate 18 people with physical distancing, and we think that'll be great. So Renee just sent me a message. Renee, do you want to ask me a question offline, or do you want to ask the group?
Well, I think it's related to something that was brought up here, but I don't know if it needs to be discussed here. So
We'll talk. Let's talk offline. Okay, now I see Shelly, and hi Shelly, how you doing? Obviously Shelly has different issues because of where her location is and what her students are doing, and we're still in the process of figuring out how she and Legal Aid and the university are going to coordinate on getting things cleaned and updated. And the externships, Dan Cannon is working with all of the field supervisors with respect to their choices about distancing and remote education. We think we have systems in place. We're feeling pretty good about it. If any students come to you and they have a concern about the clinics or the externships, my advice would be for the clinics, either call Shelly or Will Metcalf for his clinic, or Dan Cannon for the externships, because we've been thinking about these issues for a while, and I think we have a good system in place. We're still working out some of the details, but if Shelly, do you disagree with that? I think we're okay, right? Shelly's not listening to me. Anyway, so that's where we are on that. So, Jim, why don't we talk a little bit about the building? Jim,
okay. Yeah. Do you want to share the document that you circulated? We looked at this morning.
Sure. You want to?
Mr. Porter, this is Jess Johnson. I'm calling you.
Hello. So let me share that document. Hang on a second. Share. What do I do? Share screen, right? And I go to application window.
Or you can share just an individual application. So yeah, application screen or slash screen.
Yeah, I'll do that. Hang on. So, and just give me a second. I have to click over to this page. Yes, it is. All right. So this is the one, Jim, right?
Well, we're still seeing your wallpaper.
Give me a second. I will try and fix that. So sharing. Share screen. Yeah, it's very weird. It's not letting me, it's only showing me two screens. Okay. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Sometimes things don't work.
Well.
All right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, if you'll make it a little bigger. Okay, so this document Lars drafted this morning, or at least finished drafting it this morning and shared it with the law school reopening committee. And this is a summary of our last scheduled meeting, which was last week. And it's essentially a to-do list for us and a list of issues, unresolved questions, things where we have to figure things out ourselves, or where we're still waiting for guidance or something else, some other direction from the university before we can implement whatever, we're going to do about a particular subject. So Lars already mentioned about cleaning classrooms and other spaces. The university is providing custodial services with more cleaning than usual, obviously, but it's not a la carte where we can just get extra cleaning services if we want them. They're providing a baseline. If we want to do more, we have to do more ourselves. I think that's accurate, isn't it, Lars?
Yes.
Understanding? Okay. One idea we had was putting to work study students that work for various, administrative departments in various capacities to provide some extra cleaning. We won't know exactly how many work study students we're going to have until the semester is about to begin or has begun, because they're all undergrads, and their schedules, they're paid by the federal government as part of their financial aid. So they're free labor to us, but their schedules and availability are going to vary, of course, around their own class schedules, and some of them work other jobs. So we're not going to have a good idea of how many work study students we're going to have and what their availability will be until closer to the semester. So it's an idea, but I don't think we can at this point assume, oh yes, we're going to have an army of work study students to do extra cleaning or anything like that.
And if I could add, the university is getting the custodial staff to be in charge of a lot of the cleaning that's going to be done after the day is over, and deep cleaning when we have breaks in instruction. So Kia, as the building coordinator, will work with them to make sure we know what they're doing and what we need to be responsible for. But one of the things that the university's statement has said is that it's the custodial staff that are going to make sure that the classrooms have cleaning supplies in them, at least at some level. So they're not going to clean between classes, but they're going to make sure that we have cleaning materials in the classroom. So if a student or a faculty member wants to clean a surface, there will be cleaning materials available.
And I think they're going to provide like stationary hand sanitizer stations of some kind, fixed to the walls or something like that, rather than just, a gallon bottle on a table, which will walk away in 20 minutes. So I think they are going to do something like that. Is that right, Lars? Is that your understanding?
My understanding is that they're going to actually install hand sanitizer dispensers around the university, for example, near elevators and things like that.
Okay. Well, that's good. That helps. Now you want to scroll down a little bit and go to the next section there?
Yeah.
So university has indicated that if a student tests positive, it will close and deep clean the classrooms according to CDC guidelines. However, detailed instructions have not yet been disseminated. So this, in the committee last week, raised the question of, okay, students don't only go in classrooms. So if a particular student in a particular class tests positive, or a faculty member for that matter, or anybody, what do we do, if anything, about tracking where students have been in the building? Obviously, if a student who tests positive for COVID-19 uses a restroom, we can't close the restroom for, I think, 48 hours was what the university had said they intended to do. So I don't know what we can do.
So the university's current policy is that if we identify somebody in our building that is infected, that we, first of all, they should do this, but we should also do this, is to contact the Department of Environmental and Health Services and there's a number in the university's policy that we call, and then they make the decisions about what steps need to be taken in the building. And that's true across campus. So they're going to take responsibility for the deep clean that needs to happen if someone in a classroom tests positive. Now, Jim, do you see the hands up? Because I'm looking at my document and I can't see anything.
David has his hand up. So, yeah, David.
Yeah, that raises the question, who's going to do contact tracing? I mean,
university.
It's entirely possible that if a student tests positive, he or she could have been in the library. Is that going to mean that we've got to close down the library for, what was it, 4 days while they clean 53,000 square feet?
No, the university is responsible for all of that, and they're going to make a determination on what response is appropriate. They haven't told us exactly if they have. It's not clear to me what their defaults are going to be, but they have indicated that they are doing the contact tracing, that they have people who are trained to do contact tracing, and that it's not our responsibility. We call a telephone number, they take over. And that includes the cleaning of the classroom. They are responsible for that if it requires a deep clean.
So assuming that they're going to shut down a facility where the student has had contact for some number of days, what do I do with my staff? Do they go home?
So they have not, I don't know what they've told the libraries, for example. I think that's a great example. They haven't indicated to me exactly how they're going to deal with this, but my suspicion is that if your facility is closed, then yes, your staff goes home.
Okay.
But they're responsible for contact tracing, for cleaning, and for making determinations on any closures that are necessary. My understanding is that they don't believe that the entire facility needs to be closed just because a student was in a particular room. They may close a room off, so that might include a classroom, but they will not be closing entire buildings just because someone tested positive who might have been in that building. They're gonna follow a process of figuring out what needs to be done. But that's not on us, that's on them.
Okay, thank you.
But this is one of those...
That's what I understand today.
But this is one of those issues about which we still have to wait on the university to provide, more detailed information.
I don't know that more detailed information is coming. They have published a document. If you go to that pivot to fall document and you scroll to the bottom, there's a link about buildings and I'm not looking at it right this second, but there's a link that you click on and it pulls up a document that is the university's 10-page outline of everything that needs to happen with respect to operations, including how to operate the buildings and the like. It has information about how this will work. They also have a link to the Department of Environmental and Health Services, a video that they produced about contact tracing. We call them, they're responsible. They step in and tell us what they want to do because they have to work with the public health department in the city as well. It's not just the university, it's the city that gets involved, is my understanding.
Yeah, I was starting to look at those addenda to the pivot to fall document before this meeting, so there may be answers in there.
There's an extensive discussion about things like what do you do with events and the like. Yeah.
Okay, so other facilities issues, as Lars mentioned, the university is providing some signage, but it's very little. If you've been in the building at all recently, they've got one decal on the floor inside each doorway. And then they've got some signs up on doors with the same, safety things we've all seen a million times. But as far as marking up rooms and things like that, that is totally up to us. So as Lars said, we're going to put in the classrooms that have tables, which is most of them. We have CAD drawings from University Planning, Design, and Construction that illustrate where safe seating locations are in each classroom, plus the Allen Courtroom and the Cox Lounge. So we are going to mark the safe seating locations because there are fewer of them than the unsafe ones. So it's much easier to mark the good ones rather than all the bad ones. So, so Tracy is in the process of acquiring the materials to do all that. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll start doing that stuff. We're going to have 2 rooms done, 175 and 275 by July 20th, because SEP starts then, and it's using both of those rooms. So, and let me look at, Ariana's got a question in the chat here. Are we permitted to be more cautious given the high risk of COVID than whatever the university requires when someone tests positive? I'll defer to Lars, but my guess would be, yes, we are permitted to an extent, kind of, I guess, depending on the circumstances, and also probably limited by our own resources.
So I don't want to speak for the provost on this, but what I heard from her, I mean, what I'm going to tell you is what I understand is the university's policies on this. The university is issuing policies about how operations will occur. They have a view on what needs to be done, and they're gonna follow, the procedures that they believe are sufficient. I don't think they would fault any department for maybe canceling an event or asking faculty to do things online if necessary, but they're not expecting that we're going to do anything until we're told by them as a sort of like a massive response, like this classroom is closed and nobody can be in it for 48 hours. I think they feel like that's a decision they should be making because they have the information and know the rules about how to do that. I'm not a public health expert. I wouldn't have the tools to make that decision. They do. If you as a faculty member want to cancel your class because of something you're worried about, well, you've always had that ability, and I'm not going to interfere with that. I'm perfectly happy for you to make adjustments to how you're teaching your class. If you feel like you need to do something online instead of in the classroom, and you can meet the requirements of how to teach your content to your students, that's fine, right? I mean, faculty get sick and they cancel class. That happens. I don't want to. I'm not a spokesman for the university on this. The university speaks for itself on what their policies are, and I would leave it to the faculty members to make their own reasoned decisions about how they want to run their classes. Now, I certainly don't have, and I don't know if the dean feels he has the authority to just randomly decide which buildings are closed. Not randomly. That's a bad choice of words. I don't know if the dean feels like the university has empowered him to make unilateral decisions about what is open and what is closed without consultation of the university. The dean would have to answer that. I didn't feel like in my meeting that was something I was responsible for.
Lars, surely you just, right? That was
Yeah. I think
that would be a no. That would be a no.
Yeah. I think the university is thinking that they are responsible for the COVID-19 response that the university is doing with things like contact tracing, deep cleaning, building and room closures. Those are all things that they will take responsibility for. But, the dean can tell me if he feels otherwise. I am perfectly comfortable as associate dean to say, you run your class. If you have an issue you want to deal with and you feel comfortable that you can provide the instruction to the students online in a way that's meaningful, why would I interfere with that? All right, we all know what the requirements are for our classes in terms of minutes and contact hours and all of that. If you can make an adjustment that meets all of those requirements, I'm perfectly fine with that happening. It happens every year. We always have the ability to make decisions about our own classes.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to building access. The law school's full committee recommended and preferred that we keep our building closed to anyone not a member of the law school community. So as it has been since mid-March, Tracy is researching the cost of adding another card reader to the front door that faces the circle that goes into the Mosaic lobby. That's the most heavily trafficked door in the building, so it makes sense to have a card reader on it, but those aren't cheap. So we'll see whether it's feasible to put a card reader on that, and that will give students another means of ingress besides the library door, which is all there is now. Well, that plus the back door.
Yeah, the back door, the Mosaic lobby.
Which isn't very practical for a lot of people because of where it's located. So we will see about that. I think we're going to try to acquire lanyards for every student so that, and probably everybody else too, just to make it easier for people to keep their cards with them, especially if they're going to be using them more often than usual. We talked about various delivery and guest access scenarios. Jimmy John's shows up, 10 times every day at lunch delivering sandwiches. So if anyone, and this is more for students than faculty and staff, but it applies to everybody. Anyone who is expecting a delivery, like a sandwich or something like that, needs to take responsibility for meeting the delivery person. We don't want students just letting random people into the building because they're hanging outside the front door with a bag and a drink. And we also need to make sure that delivery people or any other guests, guest speakers or anything like that, comply with the university's mask rule. So I'm sure all the restaurants around the university that deliver food are going to be aware of the university's rules and, make their delivery people wear masks. But as the university is requiring everybody in any public space, in any building, to wear a mask while they're there, need to make sure that's clear to anybody that we invite in. So, Ariana?
Yeah, this may be later in the document, so I apologize if it is covered somewhere later. But about the masks being required, there was a question in the forum with the provost about what do you do if a student is not wearing their mask? And she said there would be signage in the classrooms and that you should point to the sign, and that she's never had a student not comply with a polite request. But I think you said we have to make our own signage. Will there be signage that reminds people they're required to wear masks?
So
I'm almost 100% confident saying yes, there will be signage.
They've sent out the PDF versions of the signs. We just need to print them up, and maybe they're providing more, laminated or whatever. I think they're going to do that. They're going to give us signs that we can post, but we certainly have the ability to print them off right now because they've already emailed them to everybody. There's nothing in the document about what we do with a student in the classroom, and that's partly because it becomes a bit of a student conduct issue. And right now, the university has already done this. They have revised the student conduct policy to include a requirement that students follow university announcements regarding public health. So right now, our announcement is that you have to wear masks in the buildings, right? In all public areas, which include classrooms. So in addition to physical distancing, mask wearing is required. Because it's part of the student conduct code, that means that it theoretically raises issues related to honor code violations. Crystal, Coel and I and Renee are talking about how do we create a policy that doesn't overburden the honor code system with every little concern. A student forgets a mask and then they get honor coded for that. We're going to try and have a safety valve so that we can deal with it in a way that doesn't require it to rise to that level. But if we have a student that is in class and refuses to deal with this, like leave and go get a mask or bring their mask with them, it's your other students and you will have the ability to, refer them to the assistant dean for student affairs and say this student isn't following the rules. The provost is very clear, has said this in many meetings that I've been in, and hopefully I think we have, Enid, you're on the faculty senate, and other people will have heard this. She feels very strongly that a faculty member has an absolute right to ask a student to leave class if they're not following this rule. And if a student doesn't want to leave class, well, then I think what you do is you cancel class and you say, we're canceling class because of the student, and now I have to refer them to the assistant dean for student affairs. I hope it never gets to that level. And I don't think it will, because, you know, these are the rules, and we're teaching people in law school to follow simple rules like this. And that's the way the university has decided to deal with it. We're hoping that, you know, they emphasize over and over again, we're a community of care. Wearing the mask is showing that you care about other people, because if you are sick, wearing the mask reduces the chance that you'll make them sick. And that's what the university wants to emphasize. As a community of care, we do this for each other. And we hope that it never gets to a point where we have, you know, faculty, students, or staff that are not following the university's guidelines.
So I think I know what David has to say. So let's recognize David, who has his hand up.
Well, Lars of Sunnybrook Farm. I can almost guarantee that there's going to be some issues. I mean, the library, of course, has been open all summer. When the phases document came out in May and said that masks were required, we put up signs at the entrances saying that masks were required. I can tell you that students will come in, put on their mask, put it on if we remind them. Then later I will find them out in the library with their masks off, and I have to remind them again. Some people don't like it politically. Some people just don't like it physically. But just yesterday, I had an interaction with one of our students where he was studying, and I had to remind him to put his mask back on. And he was very huffy in telling me that he thought we were living in America, and he stomped out of the library. I think that that's going to happen a significant amount of the time. Now, our process has been fairly gentle in that we don't go through and act like we're mask police and look for people who don't have them. But when we encounter them, we just gently remind them that they should put their mask on. It's a public place. People don't like it, and they'll argue with you, and they'll get mad. Even law students learn how to follow rules.
I hear you.
So Lars, David and I had a conversation yesterday, and he shared that with me, which raised a question that I don't know the answer to, and you may. Do you know whether the university has announced an effective date for when that policy, you know, those changes to the student code of conduct will be effective?
They're effective now.
They are effective now. Okay.
I don't know otherwise.
Okay.
Lars and Jim, I just would like us to be conscious of the time. It's now 1:36, so theoretically we have another 24 minutes. I'd also encourage people to look at Enid's comment about masks in the.
Okay. I don't think there's much of this document left.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I look at the comments and have the document up.
Okay, it just went into a vortex. Okay, so so we're on we're done with building access, common areas. Again, it's more about furniture and things. We were talking about removing seating in public spaces. The biggest areas are the Mosaic lobby, and then the student commons outside Laurel and Gina and Deborah's offices, and then the washer lounge. So we may end up removing seating altogether, or making it impractical to use somehow. The staff kitchen and mail room, if you want to scroll down a little bit, we're recommending, the committee is recommending that we limit those to, occupancy of one at a time, and eliminate communal food and coffee. So we shouldn't use the coffee pot anymore, and just leave a pot sitting around. And We're probably going to have a lot less communal food because we're going to have far fewer events. But to the extent there is communal food, we should not have it. We do need to ask the SBA to consider rules for use of its student lunchroom down in the basement in the center of the building, and also the, recreation room where the ping pong table is and those things. So I don't think Kaylin is in on this meeting, but that is something that we will need to discuss with the SBA for the spaces that are more theirs.
She's aware they're going to work on it, and we'll coordinate.
Okay.
Jim Dimitri Johnson Cantu is the SBA rep, and he's in the meeting.
Okay. Well, there you go, Dimitri. That's an issue for the SBA. If you have a comment, please make it, or a question.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh no, that's I don't have a comment. I just noted what you said and your point, and I'll take that back to the SBA. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, okay. Kaylin and I have talked about it. She's aware of the issue.
Okay. Clinic, Lars had already referred to that, and it's a unique situation because it's not a university-owned space, it's a leased space. Printers, going to try and figure out how to reduce student interaction at those. Print jobs tend to pile up, and those, somebody comes along and sneezes on print jobs that have not been picked up. That could be a vector for infection. So I'm going to try and figure out some way to reduce the number of print jobs that tend to accumulate in the printers. Okay, so if you can scroll down a little more, Lars. Okay, so something we talked about, and I think our consensus was to explore some means of mass text messaging similar to the university's rave alerts. So if an occasion does arise where we do have to close a classroom all of a sudden, or take some other urgent step, that we have some way to, rather than trusting email, that we have some way to do mass text messaging. Bethany is exploring some of that. We may be able to use the university's rave alert system, but I'm kind of doubtful of that, so we may have to find something on our own. But as I said, Bethany is looking at things like that. So we will probably adopt something. So we're working on it. Under faculty offices here, I had recommended to the other administrators that they explore using Microsoft Bookings. It's a relatively new Office 365 app. It integrates with your calendar, and you can use it and create a bookings page. And Lee and I, and I don't want to put Angela on the spot, but Angela was the earliest adopter in the law school of it, so she's familiar with it as well. So you can make students make appointments. I mean, it can do it the old-fashioned way too. But if they want to basically publish your availability so that people can pick dates and times, we'll be happy to show you how to use Bookings. My department is going to use it for the routine things that students typically come to us for, like installing printers and things like that are not urgent. And we're setting it up so that and this is a nice feature in these circumstances. You can set it up so there's a padding of time between appointments, so that we'll set ours up, for example, for like 15-minute increments with 10 minutes between, so that we don't have students, standing around waiting their turn. We can, get people dispersed and taken care of. So we'll be happy to show anyone how to use Bookings if they want to use that for scheduling in-person office hours. Obviously, we want to reduce as much of that as possible, but where it's required, especially in my department, we're going to use that. Events. The university's recommendation is that where events must occur, we hold as many of them as possible virtually. The other administrators and I are working out we have created a Blackboard organization specifically for the 1Ls. We're planning on using it for everything that is specific to the 1Ls, or as much as possible that's specific to 1Ls. So orientation related things, exam 4 training, OPD has a lot of events. Many of them are mandatory. Some of them are voluntary. So we're going to build this organization in Blackboard so that 1Ls will have one stop, one place to look wherever there is something they are required to do or something they're required to complete or whatever. Let's see. Question came up about vendors. This is more of an administrative thing. It may not be much interest to the faculty, but we get a lot of vendors in the Mosaic lobby. We need to figure out whether we're going to let them come at all, and if so, to what extent and how often and under what conditions and so on. Lars, do you want to talk about staff availability and telecommuting? Because there were, questions there. The pivot to fall document seemed to suggest that the default should be that people should work from home where possible and limit time in the office. But on the other hand, the university seems to have this expectation that everybody should be back July 20th. So,
Jim, can I preempt this? Because this is actually an issue that I'm discussing with all the department heads. And so we're trying to figure out the schedules right now, and we'll communicate that as soon as it's available.
Okay.
Yeah. The specific issues that I wanted to highlight were the student-facing concerns that we have to work through, and making sure that there's the students know how to contact the staff when they have questions and whether the staff needs to be available on site. But the dean is working through those issues.
Okay. Yeah, obviously some departments just need to be there. Okay, and supplies. This is mostly questions, and I think the committee kind of concluded that we probably should not be in the healthcare business, and we should defer to the university and university campus health in particular about anything healthcare related, temperature checks, anything like that.
All right. So that's those are the major things that Jim and I wanted to talk to you about with respect to the classes and the building operations. Now I'm back. I can stop sharing my screen. Where do I do that? I go here and I go stop sharing. Colin, did you have more that you wanted to address, or should we just take questions from the group?
No, I don't have anything else. I really mostly wanted us to be thinking about teaching. We've done that, I think.
Yeah. Now, Les, you have your hand up. I'd be happy to take your question.
Right. One of the things we did not talk about very much in the committee, and I don't know, Lars, whether you and Jim want to talk about it, are the student offices, either for student organizations or for things like where the SSG people hang out. And we hadn't really talked about it much in terms of removing chairs or whatever.
The university has a committee looking at RSOs and what they're going to issue for regulations on RSOs. So unfortunately, since we don't have what the university's thinking is about registered student organizations, if that's what the acronym means, then as soon as we get that, we'll of course communicate with the student organizations. They obviously have to follow all of the guidelines that the university has set in place for all of us. And there's the one thing I want to make sure is that the students are part of that discussion. So I'll talk to Dimitri and Kaylin and make sure that we're on the same board about making sure that we tell the student organizations what their expectations are. And as soon as the university tells us what decisions have been made, we'll pass that along. Jim, you had your hand up.
Thanks.
You're muted, Jim.
Yes, I was. Thank you. Something that wasn't in the document that Law shared, but I wanted to make everyone aware of, related to communications. The COVID-19 resources page that we have on the intranet, Bethany and I are starting to look at that. We're going to retire some of the information that's there from the spring that's not really needed anymore. And we're going to create a whole new section just related to returning to campus in the fall. So obviously the biggest part of that work is going to be collecting the information that goes there and organizing it. But very soon, definitely before the semester starts, we plan to have everything relevant or links to everything relevant there, so that we can again point, especially the 1Ls who are just walking into this cold, one place we can point them. So if people aren't sure about a policy or a practice or what they're supposed to do in a particular situation, they'll find an answer there, or we can point them to an answer elsewhere from there. I think you're muted now, Lars.
I put a link into the university's response. They're also in the process of updating theirs. There's a lot on there that it says March and May and the like. So all of this is, the dean and I can attest, it's been a frustration for us in the slow pace that the university is following. In fairness to the university, it's a major undertaking to figure out how to get a university of 22,000 students and a total of 30,000 people switched around in short order. So I think we have to be a little bit patient on their finalizing all of their things. However, if you go to the coronavirus page and you link to the Pivot to Fall document, all of these, many of the things that we're talking about are linked, are either discussed directly in that Pivot to Fall document or are linked at the end. And I encourage everybody to look at the university's COVID-19 Pivot to Fall document, because we're following their instructions, and much of what I'm telling you and much of what Jim is telling you is based off of the starting point, which is what the university's policy is on something. But I'm happy to take additional questions. And Enid and I had a conversation, or Enid sent me an email, not to call you out, Enid, I don't know if you're still on, but there is a general sense of frustration, I would say, across campus with the faculty, with the staff, at the Senate meetings that they're having, that the university is, there's some things that are not absolute statements by the university. They're leaving some play in the system for the units to make decisions. And also they're not having hard and fast rules on everything. Enid, back me up if this is what you've heard. I mean, part of what the provost is afraid of is creating a rule that will not be enforced. So if we're gonna enforce a rule, great, let's have it as a rule. But if it's something that we want to have happen, but we're not going to have an enforcement mechanism, I think General Counsel has advised the university, make it a suggestion, don't make it a rule. So that's a bit of a frustration, I think, that some faculty have said. Also, I will note, I think the university is struggling with what is the best advice for all of this. I mean, from what, if you go to the CDC page, they say one thing about how the disease spreads. If you read the New York Times yesterday, they're saying there's 329 or 239 experts that are saying that the WHO's recommendations are wrong. We're living in a time where we don't have correct answers to much of this. Set definite answers is a better way to put it. Enid, and I didn't know if you had a thought about that.
Hi there. I was starting to type it up. Yes, that is the concern of the provost, and I can tell you that among faculty and staff is one concern is the differing interpretations among units of the Pivot to Fall plan. So, for example, in A&S, all the faculty have been told that all they have to do is, in terms of hybrid classes, is make sure that they're delivering 25% of their material online. I'm not sure what they're saying in the College of Ed, but it's different in every unit. And so that's creating some frustration among faculty as well.
I agree with that completely. And, on this score, I think the provost wants to allow the units to come up with the answers that are appropriate for their doctrines. And, we operate as a unit that has an accrediting body that has its own rules apart from SACS. So they've always said the professional schools can do things a little differently so that they meet their accreditors' requirements. And that's, for us, the 25% is the content that you need the students to engage with in order for them to learn the material as the ABA expects it. I think that's the best way we can answer that question. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you. That's it. I didn't have anything else to say, but thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I thank you, Enid, for, I want everybody to know, and I want to call out Tony in particular. Tony and I were very frustrated at first about the university's decisions about classes because, Tony made this point, I thought, really well, which is that lawyers today are in meetings like this, negotiating contracts, resolving disputes, talking to judges, and being able to do so effectively online is now a skill that lawyers need. That being said, the university does not believe that this mode is useful for instruction, and so they have not backed off of that very much. It was very hard to move the needle on that point at all. So, while we argued forcefully with the university that they shouldn't impose as much limitations on us as they did, because law is different than, history. I think we've done as well as we can under the circumstances, but it is a frustration. And I'm not the only person that has spoken to the provost. A number of faculty have, and to some extent, the appeals were heard, but not to the full extent we would have liked.
So any other questions? We have another 5 minutes.
I want to recognize the people that volunteered to be on the committee that I was running as a that I think you should think about including. I'm not going to mandate it. I think it's just useful for you and useful for the students, so that there's no confusion at the beginning of the semester about what you're going to do with your class that is distinct from the general statements that the university is making. And I'll get that out this afternoon.
So let me take this chance just to thank you and Jim Flores, because you guys, in addition, have done real person's work here. You mentioned Laura. Laura, do you or Cedric want to just share with everyone what's happening Thursday? Laura?
Yes, I will.
Okay,
we are going to, I'm not sure myself, I have a huge afro, so I don't want anybody to see me. We will be having a discussion, a symposium discussion. We have gotten together with Michael Shelton and Kaylin Walls in planning this program. And the program focuses on structural inequality and white allyship. We have Kate Fossel, who will be giving an introduction. Professor McNeil and I will be on the panel. Professor Heather Pruce, who is a scholar in criminal law, mass incarceration work from Bellarmine, will be with us, and a psychologist, Broderick Sawyer, I think from the School of Public Health. So we'll be having a broad-ranging conversation that will be available to be registered, and I think the flyers are posted up on our website, and it's going to be Thursday, July the 9th, 6 to about 7:30.
Good. Thank you very much, Cedric. So people can register.
Look forward to it.
Great. Thanks. Laura Rothstein, you have what will probably be the last word. Go ahead. Or shall we?
Will that session be recorded? So if we cannot see it at that time, we can watch it later.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not the technical person. I'll find out and send you an email. I think maybe.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll find out. I don't know the great answer. Yeah. I've been doing so many things, just sort of like checklisting thing, but I'll double back around and find out.
Thank you.
I just want to, it's online, right?
Yes.
It's online. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you go to our website, to the Rachel Justice, you'll find notice of the event there, and you can register.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else? We have 2 minutes left.